Yom Kippur. All right. Um,
Okay.
okay. So just a couple of on a structural end first. Then we'll maybe talk about the Yom Kippur begins with Kol Nidre. We know that, and it's a very solemn time, and the tune is very haunting, and it gets louder and louder each time you repeat it. It's very ominous, and it sets the tone for Yom Kippur. But when you read the Kol Nidre, it's really something that's doesn't really seem to capture the essence of Yom Kippur at all. It's about promises and vows that you made that you'd like to annul. Now that's a nice thing to do, certainly, but why does that capture the spirit of Yom Kippur? Why is that so serious, and why is that where we start off Yom Kippur with Kol Nidre? So there are a couple ideas. Number one is that obviously on Yom Kippur we're going to use the most important weapon that we have in our arsenal to really gain tshuva, and that's through tefillah, through davening. So our tefillah, in order for it to be effective, the words that we say have to be real and be genuine. If you have a pipe and you pour water through the pipe, so you can have clean water going through the pipe, and you can drink the water. But if the pipe itself is dirty, so even if you pour clean water in the pipe, the water's going to get dirty. So if your voice, so to speak, your voice box is dirty, meaning if you used your words in the past for not good things, if you made promises you haven't kept, if you abused your power of speech, so now when the words come out of you, out of who you are, it'll be sullied, it'll be dirty, so to speak. So our prayers will not be effective. So we first want to clean our system. We want to make sure that the words we're going to use will be genuine, they'll be real, we mean what we say. So we do Kol Nidre to kind of make sure that our words are prepared for proper davening. Okay, that's one idea. But the idea I wanted to really talk about was, which really captures more the essence of Yom Kippur, and that is that when you, how does it work that you can absolve yourself of a vow? How do you get off the hook? You made a commitment to something. How do you get off the hook? So there's a legal way that's done, and that's based on the idea that what you say is, and you have to explain this to a bezdin, they have to really believe this is the case. Had I known then what I know now, then I would never have made this vow. Okay, so that really, what we're saying is, had I known then what I know now means, if I would have been of that mindset, if I would have been of that mindset then, I would never have made the vow. Now I realize what the promise I made, this really is not right. It's not the appropriate thing to do. So I'm of a different mindset now than when I made that neder, and therefore I want to absolve myself when I made that neder. If let's say, God forbid, somebody has an arm amputated, and they take an arm from a person that's dead, Shimon, and they put his arm on this person. So even though he has Shimon's arm, he's not Shimon. He's still himself plus Shimon's arm. If they give him Shimon's kidney, he's still Reuven, whatever he is. If they give him his heart, he's still Reuven. But if they give him Shimon's brain, right? Now he's Shimon, right? Your mind is who you are. Right? If somebody who could transpose the entire brain, that would be you now. So when a person has a mindset change, that means you're a different person. Right? I'm of a different mind means I'm of a different person. So the way Kol Nidre operates is really the way Yom Kippur operates. In other words, Yom Kippur we're trying to operate Hashem that we're of a different mindset now. We see things from a different perspective, and therefore we're no longer the person that we were before. And that's really how the dynamic of tshuva is supposed to help as well. So Kol Nidre really is an entry into the same concept, which is I'm changing my mindset. As I prepare for Yom Kippur, I want to see things differently. And if I see things from a different perspective, I'm not that person that saw that from the other perspective earlier on. And therefore that person was not me. I'm a new person. New mindset means new person. In fact, typically speaking, when we make a shechianu, we make it on an object, on a shofar, on a sukkah, right? And here we make the shechianu and we start Yom Kippur on what? What's the object or the new object? The person.
Oh.
The person. The person. We're a new person. Hopefully, when Yom Kippur starts with a new perspective, and that new perspective, new mindset, makes us different than we were before, and therefore it absolves us of the past. So we start with Kol Nidre because that really sets the tone for Yom Kippur. That we're trying to establish that we're of a different mindset than we were before. Okay, all right. That's step number one. We also know that towards the middle of Yom Kippur we're going to read about Yonah, All right, and I want to just like I said, I want to do a couple of structural things first, and then go. So Yonah, why do we read Yonah? Why do we read what's about Yonah?
Teshuva.
What? Tshuva.
Teshuva.
So the story of Yonah is about Tshuva. Although there are many stories about Tshuva, why we particularly pick Yonah. So one explanation also is that Yom Kippur, we have to recognize who we are as a people, that we have a destiny as a people, and also each person has his own destiny that he has to really be obligated to fulfill. And Yonah was trying to run away from his destiny, and the ultimate lesson was that you can't run away from your destiny. You can't run from your destiny. And Yom Kippur, we acknowledge that this is who he's supposed to be, and we're not trying to run away from it anymore. Okay. The Vilna Gaon really has a whole different way of looking at Yonah. The Yonah means dove, and a dove typically what represents the neshama. It's white and pure. And what Yonah represents actually is when Yonah got on this ship, and they had this rocky relationship, right? A stormy relationship, if you will. The ship represents the guf, the body, and the body and Yonah didn't get along so well. And that's really the story of the neshama and the guf that have this stormy relationship. And eventually, Yonah gets expelled. So to speak, he dies. He ends up in a fish for 3 days. It's brought down in Sfarim that after a person dies, the soul hovers over the body for 3 days. So the 3 days in the fish represents where the soul was still hovering. When he gets spit out of the fish onto land, that represents Yonah coming back to life. Or, what the Gemara says, Gilgul. That's reincarnation. That Yonah represents the concept of reincarnation. He went into the fish, gone. He comes out, gets a second chance, called reincarnation. The soul comes back alive. And there's many references in the Yonah that seem to allude to the concept of Gilgul and reincarnation. And the reason why we read it in Yom Kippur is because in a sense we all go through a reincarnation in Yom Kippur. And all of us, on Yom Kippur, we get cleansed to the extent that our neshama leaves us, and we're given, so to speak, a new neshama, a new lease on life. It's kind of like a reincarnation. We experience our own personal, private reincarnation in Yom Kippur, and that's why we read that on Yom Kippur. And finally, the end of Yom Kippur is called Ne'ilah, and Ne'ilah typically understand means the closing of the gates. And we understand it to mean that's kind of a last shot. The gates are closing, you have 1 more minute or 2 more minutes to kind of get your pleas and petitions in there. But others see it the opposite. Not that gates are closing on you, but rather it's the opposite. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is closing the gate so that you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu could be only together to exclusion of everybody else. That Ne'ilah is that you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because as long as there are other forces out there, angels and prosecutors, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to in some way follow what the prosecutors' prosecutions. But Ne'ilah means HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying there's a pure yechidus between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It shows a total chiba and that love, and that's where the ultimate tshuva comes from. Alright, so we're going to go through the entire Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah, that's Yonah, and then Ne'ilah. Kol Nidre, Yonah, and Ne'ilah. One more thing about the structure of Yom Kippur, and that is the actual tefillos himself. We all know they're all viduyim, they're all confessions. All day, confession, 10 times, viduy, right? We say, we go through Aleph base twice each time, right? Aleph, right? Ayis for Ratzon, right? So we go through each one. So that's 44 al-chetz. We do that 10 times. A lot of al-chetz. I think I pointed out once that out of the 44, I think 12 are associated with speech, improper speech. 12 out of the 44, which is staggering and tells you how much emphasis we put on proper speech. But the question is, when we compare it to Rosh Hashanah, we mentioned there's no vidur in Rosh Hashanah. There's no confession whatsoever. Even though we lump them together as high holidays, and they are part of the Seres Tshuva, for some reason Rosh Hashanah gets no confession, and Yom Kippur is full of confession. What's interesting is Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. Now we know it's hard to really experience holiness if you spend the whole day dredging up all the ugly things you did all year, right? It's supposed to be a holy day. It's supposed to feel holy, and yet what happens? You spend all day thinking about all the things that all the sins that you commit over the course of the year. It brings out all the ugliness in you. How can you possibly feel holy when you spend all day thinking about it and spending all day thinking about that? So we have to understand really how to appreciate bringing up chet. The truth is, on Rosh Hashanah we don't bring up vidoy because on Rosh Hashanah we stand in front of Hashem like a servant in front of a melech, in front of a king. And on Rosh Hashanah we carry Hashem as king. Well, the worst thing you can do when you carry a king is tell the king, let me tell you all the ways I ignored you this year. right? That's the worst thing you want to do. You're supposed to carry Hashem, and you said, "Let me on your day of carry let me tell you every time I ignored you." It'd be horrible.
Say, God, if you got a minute.
Right? Right? So we don't do that. Right? We can't do that. However, on Yom Kippur, we don't stand in front of Hashem like a subject in front of a king, but rather we stand like a child in front of a parent. And then there's a whole in front of a parent. And there's just the opposite. When a child unloads in front of a parent and expresses all the things they've done wrong, the parent's not insulted, just the opposite. The parent understands it's the child's desire to get close to the parent, and he needs to kind of, in a cathartic way, he has to really kind of express all things done wrong as a way of getting closer to the parent. It's not seen as an act of rebellion, it's not an act of disrespect. In front of a parent, the parent understands that the child needs to say this just to get it off his chest, because he really wants to get closer, and he feels bad. It's an unbearable guilt that he's feeling, and he wants to unload because he wants that relationship. Because Yom Kippur is really about a relationship. On Yom Kippur, we're really davening to restore that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what happened on the first Yom Kippur. When Hashem forgave us, and Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the second Luchos, the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu was restored. And on Yom Kippur, what we want to do is restore a relationship. And so, the Ashamnu and the Viduis in general are a way to really create a closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Barditcher Rebbe once said, beautifully said, Hashem, it's true Bnei Yisrael sinned, but if they didn't sin, would you ever get a chance to hear such a sweet confession? Right? Because it's such a sweet confession. It's really Zis, he calls it a Zisa Shamnu, because it really brings a kurva, a closeness. And that's what the confession is supposed to do. It's supposed to bring a closeness, not create a distance. So the purpose of bringing up sin, on Yom Kippur, it's true, the rest of the year, thinking about sin could be quite depressing. I'll tell a story about this snake that couldn't see so well. So he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you have a hard time hunting, you just can't see, you need glasses. So he prescribes glasses for the snake. Okay. It's very good. Snake sees, everything's good. He sees the doctor a few months later. How's it going? He said, it's great. I can see terrifically, but I have to go to a psychologist now. Psychologist? Why are you going to a psychologist? Because I'm depressed. Why are you depressed? Because I realized the past few months I was dating a garden hose. So sometimes when you open your eyes, it gets very depressing, right? So the rest of the year, if you open your eyes, right? If you open your eyes and you see all the Chataim, it makes you feel ugly. But not on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, because the day is so holy, Adarabah, the bringing out of the sin is just a way to get really closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It facilitates a closeness. The rest of the year might be depressing to do this. To spend all day confessing might be depressing. We don't do that any other year. But Yom Kippur, because of the day itself. In fact, we say, Itzuma Shal Yom HaChaper. The day itself is so holy that there's a partial atonement that every Yid enjoys just because he's part of Klal Yisrael and he believes in the day of Yom Kippur and he believes in atonement. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu guaranteed eternity for a Klal Yisrael, so there has to be some sort of automatic kapara in order for Jews to continue to exist. So every Jew, to the extent that he believes in Klal Yisrael and believes in the kapara of Yom Kippur, gets an automatic atonement just by showing up, so to speak. That's a very powerful thing. Now we ask ourselves, again, we've been there, done that. Every Yom Kippur we come back, we say it'll be better, it doesn't happen. So what's the point? What's the point of going through this again and again and again? So I want to offer two ideas. One I think I may have mentioned in the past, I remember, and that is talking about the idea of kapara and that Yom Kippur affords a kapara. It's a cleansing process. I remember I was sitting in an office, and the office overlooking across the street was a car wash. You see all these cars, dirty cars, going to the car wash, coming out spanking clean. It's really nice to see them all going dirty, come out clean, beautiful. But I'm thinking to myself, but they're coming out clean. But in 3-4 days, it's going to snow. It's wintertime. It's going to be filthy. What's the point? In 3-4 days in the wintertime, why are you washing a car? You know it's going to get filthy again. And the answer is, because you can't compare old schmutz to new schmutz, right? Old dirt gets caked on, and it's much harder to get rid of. New dirt is much easier to clean. But when we go through a Yom Kippur process, we're no longer keeping the old schmutz. It's not embedded in us. So even if we sin again over the course of the year, it's easier to remove that schmutz, that dirt, because it's not embedded. The kapara, the cleansing process of Yom Kippur, takes away the embedded sin. So we might continue to sin, But it won't be the idea of removal will make it much more. It will be much easier because it's not the old shmutz that's getting caked on. That's one idea. The other idea about going through Chet is like this. I'm rather going through every single year is like this. That there was a psychiatrist. His name was Milton Erickson, and he invented what's called the $1,000,000 miracle. Oh, the $1,000,000 question. No, take it back. The miracle question was called. I think it was called the miracle question. All right, it's not really relevant. What was that? One of his patients was severely depressed, suicidal. She had a husband that was abusive, very dysfunctional family, and she kept threatening suicide. Anyway, she called him once, said, "This time I'm doing it, I'm doing it." And he sensed in her voice that she was being real. In fact, he even heard, like, I think they said that she had the gun. He heard, so he panicked. He knew he wouldn't have time. He had to think quick. So he says to her, and I forget her name, he says to her, "Okay, if you could dream of an ideal world for yourself, what would you dream?" He said, "What are you talking about? I'm not dreaming about ideal world. I'm committing suicide. No, just indulge me. Think of an ideal world. What would it be?" And she pressed her again. She says, "Well, look, I love it that so my husband could love me and wouldn't abuse me. I'd love it if I could learn parenting skills so I could have a good relationship with my children. I'd love it if I could have, live with friends who are warm and supportive." So he says to her, "You don't see, this could happen. It's doable. Your dream could be true. It can come true." And once he got her to realize that she could dream, and the dream was possible, he totally took her out of the suicide. On Yom Kippur, it's true, we may come back next year with other sins, but we're responsible to dream and hope and express on Yom Kippur, this is what we want for ourselves for the coming year. And that gives us strength to continue forward. We might fail a few times, but it's important to hope and dream and have a big picture for yourself. And finally, the reason why we shouldn't get discouraged if we come back every single year for the following reason. We know we learned the Lamed Tes Malachas, the 39 Malachas, the 39 categories of work that we can't do on Shabbos from what we did do when we built the Mishkan. Correct? So, they built, you can't build. They cooked, you can't cook, right? What about writing? Where was it? We cannot write on Shabbos. Where did they write in the Mishkan? Where they wrote was they had planks of wood that they had to use as the walls. And they would dismantle the walls every time they traveled, but they were required when they put it back up the next time to put the walls in the same location they were the first time, on the south side, the north side, next to each other, kind of like you have sukkahs and you have panels. So very often you'll number the panel, you'll number the panels of walls, because otherwise you're putting the wrong panel on the wrong side. Doesn't max, doesn't mix, right? So here also the walls had to be in a certain location. So they'd write on the first plank Aleph, the next one Aleph, then Beis and Beis Gimel Gimel. So they knew exactly how it goes. So that's why you can't do writing on Shabbos, because they wrote in the Mishkan. Okay, I'm going to come back to this in a second, but I want to digress for a minute. Now I'll tell you why. We just read in the Torah Parasha a few weeks ago. It says anybody who's afraid of his sins doesn't have to go to war, is exempt from war. Yeah, that's a very bizarre thing. I mean, who's not afraid of their sins? If you think your sins will make you vulnerable, that Hashem won't protect you, you're exempt from war. So who's not afraid of sin? Ain't tzaddik ba'aretz asher ya'aseh v'liachta. There's no tzaddik in the world that doesn't sin. So is everybody exempt from war? Doesn't make sense. So I want to answer that question right now. I told you writing in the Mishkan was when they wrote on these pillars. But you're not allowed to race. You're not allowed to race on Shabbos. Where did they race in the Mishkan? Where they raced? If they made a mistake, instead of putting an Aleph, they put a Beis, they had to race it. So being that they had to race, that's why you can't do it on Shabbos either. Now that's astounding when you think about it. Because I'm sure when they built the Mishkan, somebody asked somebody to pass me a cup of water. You're allowed to pass a cup of water on Shabbos, right? What you can't do on Shabbos, on those actions that were integral to the building of the Mishkan, that's what you can't do on Shabbos. Agreed? Erasing was a mistake. That's not integral to the building of the Mishkan. How in the world could that be one of the malachas of Shabbos? It was a mistake. That's not integral to the building of the Mishkan. Must be, the Torah is telling you, wrong. That mistakes are an indispensable part of building also. We grow from our mistakes. Construction involves mistakes. The Torah is telling you an incredible thing. that mistakes allow you to grow. Because when you don't know, we don't know what our flaws are. We don't see them. But when you sin, you expose a flaw. Let's say somebody has an anger issue, but they don't know it. The first time they get angry and smack someone, now they realize I'm angry, right? So the action exposes the flaw. And now you have an opportunity to correct it. Of course, everybody sins. Who doesn't go to war? Well, the two kinds of people that sin. There's a person that sins and becomes paralyzed by the fact that he sinned. He's just like totally overwhelmed and he can't move. Such a person, we don't want to go to war. You're paralyzed. But there are other people that understand that the sin that they committed means they have an opportunity to overcome it and grow. Those are the people you want battling for the Jewish people. The people that are warriors, the people that say, I'm willing to battle, I understand this sin was a mistake, and I'm willing to overcome that mistake. Those are the people you want to do battle. So yes, there are those that that are exempt, because those are the ones that are paralyzed by sin. But there are others that also sin, but they see sin as an opportunity to grow. So every year it's true. We stay before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we say we're going to be better, different, and we make mistakes over the course of the year, but that's okay. Mistakes are part of how Hashem expects us to grow. And it doesn't always happen overnight. You know, they give this classic example. I think you want to plant a bamboo stick. They say you plant it in the ground, you water it, and water it, and water it, and water it, and nothing happens. For 5 years. And then you begin to water after 5 years again some more, and then it shoots up 90 feet in 15 days. So when did it grow? In 15 days? Or 5 years in 15 days? Growth took place 5 years ago. You didn't see the growth happening yet. So every year, when we go to Yom Kippur, it's part of a growth process. And it's not, if we mean what we say, if it's genuine, then it's part of a growth process. So we shouldn't be discouraged about Yom Kippur, even if we know we'll make mistakes, because mistakes are part of the process of growth. And number two is you're supposed to hope and pray, and dream, and get a big picture of yourself. And those are the reasons why we go through this every single year, because it's part of the growth process. And just being there offers a certain cleansing that allows us to get rid of the ultimate. So even if we have to make mistakes over the course of the year, they're not embedded mistakes, the ones that we can correct more easily. So those are the reasons why we go through Yom Kippur every single year, even if we're going to make mistakes. And even, right, we come back and done that. As long as we're genuine and sincere in our attempts to want to get better. So those are some of the themes of Yom Kippur in terms of the dynamic of tshuva. I want to talk about tshuva for a moment, then go to a particular phase of forgiveness. So tshuva involves us saying we're sorry, Takash Baruch Hu. We regret emotionally what we've done, and we also make a commitment to the future. And we're not going to do it again, and we express it. Vidu b'peh. You do it in your mouth. And that is the essence of tshuva. It's hard to say you made a mistake. It's hard to say you're sorry. It's very hard. I remember little confession. I don't know if I should go on a video or not, but we're going anyway. Little confession. So I was driving down the highway once. That's right. I was driving the highway once. If they get me on this, I'm pretty okay. Yeah. So driving on the highway once, and I'm late for a meeting, and Beltway's backed up. I see the exit, like, quarter mile. I see like 3/4 of a mile up. It still takes a while to get there. But there's a shoulder. Now, you're not really supposed to drive on the shoulder. But I'm convincing myself, it's not really the shoulder. It's really the extension of the ramp. It just looks like kind of the ramp. In fact,
Start early.
Yeah, exactly. Start early. And besides, I'm probably doing everybody a favor because there's one less car on the road. I should get a prize for what I'm doing. Just the opposite, right? So I get on the shoulder, and I'm driving, and I'm really excited about my newfound freedom because everyone's stuck there, and I'm getting to the exit. And then I get the dreaded siren.
Hey.
Look in the rearview mirror, and there's that little cherry thing going around and around. Okay, so I stop. And I think it was, okay, what am I going to tell him? What am I going to tell him? I'm late to a meeting, and I panicked, and I didn't realize, and I thought it was kind of like the extension, and I figured that, really what's harm is being done, it's really okay. And then as he's approaching, I get this lump in my throat. Not because I'm dreading the ticket and the cost of the ticket, or the points that's going to accumulate, or, all the things that come with the insurance that goes up. What I'm dreading is I realize I'm stuck. Because just the day before, I was teaching my high school class the importance of being honest. And here I am trying to think of ways, kind of fudge it a little bit. I can't do it. I can't. So I rolled down the window. The officer says, "What's going on?" And I said, "Officer, I blew it. I blew it. I tell you the truth. I had an appointment. It's not an excuse. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I blew it." He looks at me and goes, "You're an honest man. I'm going to let you off the hook this time." Right? Now, that's not the point of the story, because I'm sure more times that doesn't happen. All right? That's not the point of the story. The point of the story was, what? The point of the story is that it's hard to say, "I'm sorry, I blew it. I made a mistake." We have a million excuses why we didn't make a mistake. Right? And the truth is, we have to be able to own up and say, we made a mistake. And that's very difficult to do when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's certainly difficult to do when it comes to Bein Adam L'Chaveiro with other people as well. It's hard to really to make that statement that we made a mistake. So I want to talk a little about that, but first a little bit about tshuva itself. During this Aseres Mei Tshuva, we know it says, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says, on Rosh Hashanah all tzaddikim anechtamim l'chaim, all tzaddikim are signed in the book of life, all Rishayim are signed in the other book, and the Beinim tluyim va'ondim. Their sentence is suspended. Im zachu, if they're meritorious during their 10 days, they're forgiven and they're written in the book of life Yom Kippur. If not, they're erased. The Rambam, when he quotes this Gemara, tweaks it very slightly. He says again on Rosh Hashanah, tzeikim nechtam l'chaim, misham nechtam l'misa, the beinim tluim v'omdim. But instead of saying im zachu, if they're meritorious or not, he says im asu tshuva, if they did tshuva, then they'll be signed the book of life and seal the book of life on Yom Kippur. If not, not. And all the commentaries ask, why did the Rambam switch from if they're meritorious to asa tshuva? Now it may seem like not much of a switch, but it really is, because if the Beinoni is the guy, the in-betweener, he's got half mitzvahs, half averis, there's two ways to tip that scale. It's true you could do tshuva, but you could also be meritorious by adding some more mitzvahs to flip the scale. And the Rambam, for some reason, ignores that other option, which imzachu would imply if they're meritorious, which is two ways. You can be meritorious by decreasing the averis or increasing the mitzvahs. And he says specifically imasa tshuva. Why did he skip imzachu and why did he write imasa tshuva? So there are many approaches. So the Bali Musar learn like this. The Bali Musar learn that if you did something wrong to the king and you don't apologize, there's a price to pay. But if you did something wrong to the king, but the king comes to your house, knocks on the door, and says, I'm willing to really make amends, and you slam the door in his face, now you're done. During the Aseres Mei Tshuva, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is much more accessible to us, and he makes tshuva much more accessible to us, not doing tshuva is worse than any mitzvah we could do. So Rambam had to say he must have tshuva. You couldn't tip the scale. The Rambam had to learn that imzachu meant tshuva, because there's no amount of mitzvah you could do during these days that will tip the scale if you ignore the tshuva that you need to get done. When Hashem is saying, "I'm making myself available to you now to do tshuva," so the ignoring of the tshuva opportunity when it's so near and easy and accessible will far outweigh any possible mitzvah you want to do. That's how some people learn. Okay. Others have a much more of a lumdisha, kind of a very more of a insightful way of saying this. The books of life and death were determined on Rosh Hashanah, and now we start a new year. If you do more mitzvahs during the Aseres Mei Tshuva, that's really for the books of the new year. How could adding mitzvahs affect your status from the year before? Doesn't make any sense. The only thing that can affect the status of the previous year is tshuva, because tshuva erases averis retroactively. So Rambam had to say masa tshuva. Adding mitzvahs is not going to make the difference, because adding mitzvahs is now for the new year. You can't add mitzvahs on the new year, fix the books from last year. The only thing that can fix the books from last year is tshuva, which retroactively erases the averis. So Rambam had to say masa tshuva. That's the second approach. Third approach, which is similar to the second approach in terms of its effect, is that the word tluyim va'omdim, which I conveniently translated, says that his sentence is suspended, because that's what it really means, not literally. His sentence is suspended until Yom Kippur. But some learn tluyim va'omdim means something else. Tluyim means to hang, literally. It really doesn't make much sense to say that the tzaddikim and the Rishayim get dealt with in Rosh Hashanah, and the Beinim on Yom Kippur. when probably most of the world fits into the Beinoni category. So that means most of the world don't get judged on Rosh Hashanah. It's kind of like, we think Rosh Hashanah is really for everybody, and now we're really saying it's much more exclusive to Tzaddikim and Rishayim, and it excludes the Beinonim. That's kind of odd. So Mepharshim learned, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz learns, I don't think it's his own idea, that no, the Beinonim are judged on Rosh Hashanah also. They don't get their judgment pushed to Yom Kippur. They're judged. You know what their judgment is? You're a Beinoni, you get the noose around the neck. You're Tluyim va'omdim. Your noose is around your neck. That is the sentence. And the only thing you can do at this point is undo the noose. Adding mitzvahs is not going to undo the noose. The only thing going to undo the noose, again, is tshuva, which retroactively gets rid of the noose. So there is a sentence for the Beinoni on Rosh Hashanah, a noose around his neck, so to speak. That there was a death sentence placed on him that he could undo. But that undoing requires tshuva. Mitzvah can't undo. Okay, those are 3 approaches, but I want to get, one more thing before I take a question.
So.
But I want to do one more thing before I forget, all right?
Go ahead.
All right. Because I'll forget it otherwise. The Rav Hutner has a different approach, which I think is a beautiful approach. He says we really got to figure out what we mean when we say tzaddik and Rasha and Beinoni. So tzaddik we say means has 50 mitzvahs and 10 averos. Rasha has 50 averos and 10 mitzvahs. Well, sometimes it works out in the math. Sometimes it makes sense. Let's say a guy only has 3 averos and he has 30 mitzvahs. Okay, makes him a tzaddik. Unless the 3 averos are idolatry, adultery, murder, and his 50 mitzvahs he does ma'amer chronim. Okay, so the bottom line is a nice thing ma'amer chronim, but you kill the kid, he's a tzaddik if he does gil rash v'chazam. Makes no sense. So clearly, the definition of tzaddik and Rasha cannot be quantitative mitzvahs. Can't be. Right? Yeah. Okay. So we say, okay, it's quality. It's quality, right? And a tzaddik has more quality mitzvahs than averos, and a Rasha has more quality averos than mitzvahs. So it's not actually the physical number amount, the sheer amount, but the quality. So you tzaddik, you do incredibly great mitzvahs quality-wise. Even if you have made smaller averos, you'll still be considered tzaddik. And the Rasha, who may have more mitzvahs, but the quality of averos are much more impactful, will be a Rasha. That makes sense, except then you get to the Beinoni. Because in the Beinoni he's saying, he has exactly quality mitzvahs and quality averos. Right? And then when you tip the scale, boom, he's now a tzaddik. That doesn't sit well with us. First of all, how to get a person that's exactly, precisely quality mitzvahs versus quality averos, and then he's a Beinoni, but if you tip the scale, you do 1 ma'amer chronim, now you're a tzaddik. How's that possible? You go from the Beinoni to the status of a tzaddik by adding 1 slight little mitzvah. Doesn't make sense either. So Rav Hutner says, we got it wrong. It's really based on Tanya. He says, a Rasha, we're not talking about amounts of mitzvahs, not quantity and not quality. A Rasha is somebody whose basic nature is just to do whatever his body wants. That's it. His whole flow, his whole personality is, I'm just giving into my Yetzer Haras. He's dominated by Yetzer Hara. The tzaddik, on the other hand, is the opposite. He's somebody who basically is governed by his Yetzer Tov. Look, you can have a person that's a patient person by nature, and he'll get angry once in a while. But it doesn't change the fact, his status, he's a patient person. He's a patient person who'll have to get angry once. Right? So tzaddik is somebody whose basic nature is he does what the right thing is, and once in a while the Yetzer Hara gets the best of it, but he's still a tzaddik because that's his basic nature. The Rosh the other way around. He's somebody whose basic nature is to just do whatever Yetzer Hara wants. Once in a while he chaps around a mitzvah, whatever reason, right? The Beinoni, now we can relate to him. He's the wishy-washy guy. He doesn't have a clearly defined path. There are days he really feels good about doing mitzvahs. There are days he feels good about doing whatever his body wants to do. He hasn't defined himself yet. He doesn't have a natural inclination one way to the next. He's kind of all over the place. Such a person, the Rambam says, you can't just add a mitzvah. That's not going to change your personality. Again, now we're defining tzaddik and Rasha as personalities. The tzaddik is someone whose personality is to do mitzvahs. The Rasha is someone whose personality is to do averos, or the physical Yetzer Hara things. But Beinoni is the guy whose personality is wishy-washy. The only thing that could change your personality is not adding a single mitzvah to tip the scale. Tshuva changes your personality. Tshuva makes you a different person than you were before. So that's why the Rambam said in Masa Tshuva, because he understood that the way to change the status of a Beinoni to a tzaddik can't be by simply adding a mitzvah, quality or quantity. Either way. It has to be a personality change. Tshuva fleshes out and changes your personality. As we said earlier, it's a change in perspective. The Kol Nidre is that change in perspective. And Tshuva says, Hashem says, I'm considering you as a different personality, and you walk out of Yom Kippur hopefully with an inclination to really want to do good. And that's why Rambam specifically said tshuva as opposed to any other mitzvah. So that's the concept of tshuva. Yeah, you had a question, yeah.
I guess my question really relates to what you just said.
Okay.
A person changes his attitude. Somehow or other, we have to accept God can recognize he's a changing attitude.
Right.
But that can be very momentary. It can be only, at a point of great emotion when they're doing kneel and blowing the shofar. He walks out of the place and then he's exposed to the same temptations and falls.
So it is true.
That's not a chance to prove
right.
that he's going to follow through. So how do you get to teshuva in that situation?
So it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to, right, he knows your heart, and he needs to know whether this is really a momentary thing or something very sincere. Understand, when we go through the process of Tshuva and Yom Kippur, and we're fasting, and we're davening, and we don't have a Yetzer Hara that day, actually. Chazal say we don't have the Yetzer Hara. The Satan doesn't impact us on Yom Kippur. I think it was Rav Volba, I'm not sure what it was. After Yom Kippur was over, let me back it up. It was another story. There's a famous ger in the times of the Vilna Gaon, and the name is slipping now. A very famous ger. And today you can become a ger, and it's perfectly comfortable in America, and a lot of gerim. In those days, being a ger means you could get burnt at the stake. I mean, you got to be in mind. If you're a Christian that converted you, and there was one Christian that converted to become a Jew, not one, many of them, but one in particular that Vilna Gaon knew very well, and he ended up dying at the stake because he refused to renounce Judaism. They asked him, I think it was him, they asked him, what made you decide to become a Jew? So he said, I was walking past a shul one night, and I saw the Jews walking down the stairs, and I saw their faces, and I said, I want to be like them. I think that they found out later, he was talking about, he didn't know at the time, it was Matzah Yom Kippur. He just saw the Jew when he left Yom Kippur. His face looked different. There was an incredible shine to his face. There was something special, almost angelic. And Rav Volba, let me fast forward now, Rav Volba once called his students into the room right after Yom Kippur. He said, before you guys go for your break and eat, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, now I'm feeling pretty holy. But tomorrow, back to normal. He said, you got it backwards. What you're feeling now is the real you. Tomorrow and the day afterwards, you're going to get sucked up by the Yetzer Hara. But that's not the real you. On Yom Kippur, it's an exercise in really getting in touch with the real you. So the real you is sincerely saying tshuva. That's what the point is. Your real you on Yom Kippur is really genuine because you're getting to tap into the deepest part of you are. In fact, we have 5 parts of an neshama: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yichida. Right? 5 parts, and the yichida is the holiest part, the part that never gets tainted by sin. And not coincidentally, we have 5 tefillos on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur: Ma'ariv, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. The Kabbalah say that each Amida is really trying to polish or one of those levels of neshama. Ne'ilah, you're tapping into Yechida, the purest part of who you are. So really, on Yom Kippur, the real you is really making genuine commitments. And that's what Hashem wants. But you're right, the Yetzer will snag us later on because those are mistakes.
So I always struggle with this one also. Teshuvah means returning and being forgiven.
Well, forgiven is what Hashem does. Tshuva means they return.
Forgive. But we can't. We humans are very bad at forgiving others. So how do we earn forgiveness from God when we carry these hostilities and anger and
that brings my next point
against our fellow man forever?
That's a great question, and in fact, you're absolutely right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you can't patch up your differences between Adon and Chaveroi, I can't forgive you either. Because when you sin against fellow man, you're also sinning against me too. So you're right, a requisite for complete tshuva is a reconciliation with others too. And we're going to talk about it right now, actually. But tshuva is a day of reconciliation. All right? I might even add, by the way, it's a reconciliation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu too. There's a story about I think it was a Baditzra. It's Kol Nidre, he's about to start Yom Kippur, and he says, wait, we can't start. So when I says, I don't see Beryl. when Beryl's not here. When we're not starting until Beryl shows up. Find Beryl. How are we going to find Beryl? Go find Beryl. All right? So they look, they find Beryl. Beryl, how come you weren't showing up to Yom Kippur? I'm too angry at Hashem. I'm not coming anymore. What are you angry at Hashem for? I'm really angry. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going. I'm not. Beryl, well, what's going on? So Beryl says, well, I'll tell you the truth. He was a furrier. He made, out of furs, he made the coats. And a poritz, like this Polish feudal lord, had commissioned him to make a beautiful fur coat for him. Now, Beryl was actually very, very skilled, and he was able to use the minimum amount of furs to make this beautiful coat, so he was able to keep the fur, the rest of it, for himself. And that was a lot of money that he planned on really, it was like a saving that could have, got him through the winter. Anyway, he was very proud of himself. He got these furs. He was allowed to keep them, and that was quite a bit of money. 2 days later, a thief breaks in the house and steals his furs. He said, how could Hashem let that happen? I'm so angry. That's it. I'm not showing up to Yom Kippur. I'm done. So the Barditcher looks at him and says, Beryl, it's Yom Kippur. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive Hashem? All right? All right? The point is that really Yom Kippur is a day that we're supposed to have reconciliation all around. It's about a relationship. And you're right. It's about us and Hashem to us, and us with other people too. So I want to talk about us and other people, because you're absolutely right. Unless we can really reconciliate with other people, we're lacking there too.
So maybe we have to, in one sense, we have to forgive God for accidents that happen in life.
Well, the things that we think, obviously, everything Hashem does is for good. That story is not really. We don't have legitimate gripes. We think we have legitimate gripes, but even those we should let go of in Yom Kippur. The point is, Yom Kippur is really about restoring a relationship. And if the things that are holding you back from a relationship, get rid of those things. Of course, we certainly believe that Hashem does everything for our benefit, but when we in our own minds feel that Hashem has wronged us, we have to get rid of that because we want a relationship. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So, I want to guess very quickly, there are a couple of... So, like I said, I'm sorry is a very difficult thing to say. But you don't know how effective those 3 words can be. Somebody is upset at you, and they're feeling a lot of pain, and you say, I'm sorry. It lifts their pain. All of a sudden, the thing that you did to them, which they thought was so horrific, now they realize, maybe it wasn't so bad. And now, when you say you're sorry, they kind of look at you with, I guess you have human frailty also. I guess you're human too. You can make mistakes. It totally changes their outlook, and it really relieves them of a lot of pain when you say I'm sorry. When you say genuinely, it transforms a person. They let go of their anger. They let go of what they think is a perceived abuse, and now they say maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was. They realize a person can make mistakes. It changes everything. But we have a hard time saying that, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one is very often we personalize. When somebody wrongs us, we automatically assume that their intent was to harm us. And our egos get in the way, and we really get upset. I think I may have mentioned the story once about this woman that had a very, very nasty divorce from her husband. He walked out on her, in her case, and she hadn't seen him in years. Anyway, she's walking down the street one day, and there enough, she's her ex-husband, a few yards up ahead. She's overcome with anger. She runs up behind him, and she's like, she has a pocketbook, she's like, smashing him over the head, just like literally beating him up. She's just so angry. Pent up anger. He turns around. It wasn't her ex-husband. It was the rabbi of the town. Right? So now she's humiliated. She's embarrassed. She's crying. She says, please forgive me. Please forgive me. And he says to her, why are you asking forgiveness? You weren't beating me up. You were beating up your ex-husband. The rabbi understood quite correctly. There's not reason to personalize. She wasn't beating him up. It has nothing to do with him. She was beating up her husband. Often, people yell at you and do things wrong, and you think, they're upset at me. That's not true. You just happen to be the convenient punching bag, but they're upset about something else. Something went on at home, something went at the store. Now, it doesn't make it right. You don't have a right to dump because you had a lousy day on somebody else. I'm not saying that. But we should not personalize, because very often, I know when I teach high school students and kid walks in really upset and he ignores me, he's angry, I know, has nothing to do with me. My son, he got into a fight with his parents right before he came to school. But we personalize that. So we have a hard time forgiving because we personalize. That's number one. Number two, what also makes it challenging is that when sometimes we have to be able to put things in perspective and realize that people do things wrong, but there might be seeing from a different vantage point and wearing their shoes. There was a guy who's walking with his son. There was a father went to visit his son in a camp on visiting day. And they're walking down a path, and as they're walking down the path, there's somebody else walking to, towards them. And the father kind of like nods, like a half a nod, like he acknowledges him and then doesn't acknowledge him. And someone's kind of like, what's that? You know me, you don't know him. Like, who is he? That's nobody. Who is he? Nobody. The father didn't want to talk about it, the more the son insisted. Finally, the father told him, okay, I'll tell you. He said, before the war, World War II that is, he knew he had to get out of Poland. And he saved money over the course of months. He scrimped and saved to buy tickets, get a visa, to get out of Poland. And he kept that money right under the Aron, in the ark in the shul. It was a safe place, put it in the shul. He confided to his best friend that he was collecting this money to get out. The day he wanted to get the money to get out, to buy the tickets, was gone. His friend had stolen the tickets because nobody else knew about it. Bought tickets for his own family. That was that guy. So his son, so why don't you like strangle him? Aren't you angry at him? He said, "I want you to know, for years I was fuming at him. I mean, in the end, I was able to get my family out another way, but I was fuming. How could he do such a thing, my friend?" And then after a while, after a long while, after my anger subsided, I said to myself, you know what? Maybe it wasn't even so fear of me to put him in that tempting position. He also has a family. And I'm telling you about this money that he has access to. I don't know what I would have done. Maybe I wouldn't have been better than him. Maybe I would have. I don't know. But maybe it wasn't so right of me to put him in that tempting position. Again, the fellow was wrong. It was a horrible thing he did. But forgiveness means sometimes realizing, that the man was in a tough position, and I put him in that position.
It's a true story.
It's a true story.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, one more idea of forgiveness, and that is that sometimes forgiveness is difficult, and we have to do it not for ourselves, but for the other person. This is a true story as well. It's a sad story. It happened about a few years ago, not exactly years, in Israel. There was a couple of families doing carpool, and they one day a guy couldn't do carpool, so he called a friend of his and says, "Do me a favor. I know you have a van, for your business. Could you take all these kids to school today?" And the guy said, "Sure, no problem." And he takes them all to school, drops them off to school. They all go to school. But one kid, the teacher says he's not here. So he tells the principal, one kid's not here. So the principal calls the parents, says, "What, is your kid sick?" He says, "What do you mean? Sent to school." He's not in school. Can't be. He has to be in school. Not in school. Finally, they tracked it down and realized that the driver probably didn't let him off. What happened was the driver, he wasn't a bus driver. He didn't know how many kids were in school. He knew he was taking a bunch of kids to school. He didn't realize that one of the kids fell asleep in the back of the car. Now, the story it's a horrible story. It was an incredibly, unbearably hot day in one of those chamses in Eretz. Closed windows, in a van, sealed in there. The child didn't make it. The driver obviously felt terrible, but he was arrested for second-degree manslaughter. And not only that, the judge prohibited. He said you can't go within 100 yards of that person, of the family's house, because they see you, they're going to go. It's going to create so much wounds and pain, open up wounds. You can't see that. So, so that's what happened. So he was waiting for his trial, whatever. Anyway, they're sitting shiva, and the father says, "Hey, where's this so and so?" They were old friends. They said, "Oh, the judge said you can't even go within 100 yards of this place." He says, "You tell the judge he has to lift that, what do you call that? Not car, what's it called?
Restraining
order. He has to lift that restraining order right now. And I want him to come to my house." So the judge got word that the guy, anyway, the guy hears that this guy wants to come to the house. That's the last thing he wants to do is walk into this house. I mean, it's too painful. But the father said, "I want you to come." He doesn't know what to expect. He walks in the house like he walking into a lion's den. He just, the father's talking to somebody and he sees him walk into the room. And the bus driver was really hesitant, the person who drove the van. And he kind of froze, 2 feet after he walked in. And he didn't want to go any further. Sorry. Thank you. He didn't want to go any further. And the father sees him and tells him to come. And he takes another couple steps. And the father gets up from Shiva, walks over to him. And everyone's now, all eyes are on them. And they know the father's going to scream, yell. The father looks at him, walks over him, and gives him the biggest hug in the world. And says, "I want you to know, I forgive you." The father understood his son was gone, and it wasn't really malice at all. It was a terrible, terrible accident. He knew that this guy's life was almost gone. He could never live himself the rest of his life. Unless he forgave him, he would never have his life back. So sometimes we need to forgive, even if we don't feel it ourselves, and we're angry, and we have or upset, or hurt, whatever, fill in the blank. But it'll give a person back their life. It gave this person back his life. And that's what this great man did. So sometimes forgiveness takes greatness on our part. But then you're right. When Hashem sees us willing to forgive, when it's hard, when maybe sometimes people are even deserving, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what? I'll reciprocate. And I'll forgive you as well. Even if maybe you don't deserve. Right? So you're absolutely right. They are very much intertwined.
It's a double win for the party that was, the aggrieved party and the person who did whatever was done.
What do you mean?
Because when you carry that kind of hatred around, that's a burden all to
Sure.
itself. It's like acid in your your personality. It affects you in every way possible.
Of course, it eats you up
and
inside.
you're destroy.
Right.
You're not hurting the other person 1/10 as much as you're hurting
Right.
yourself.
Right. Absolutely.
You have to get rid of it.
So bottom line is that so the forgiveness that we do is there for other people. We want Hashem to forgive us. But again, it's about getting a relationship back. So Yom Kippur really, ultimately, is about getting our relationship back with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we desire. And therefore, even the unburdening of sins is an act of love that brings a closeness. The rest of the year might not do that, but Yom Kippur, because of the holiness of the day and the nature of the day, it gives us that opportunity. So Yom Kippur becomes that incredible time of reconciliation that we're looking for with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the truth is, we know, in life, you have a relationship with your wife, and you get into a fight, but if you're able to reconcile, you end up being closer than before the fight. There's something about that brings you even closer. So yes, there's a chet, there's a struggle, but if you reconcile properly, you do it the proper way, you can actually get closer. And that's why, actually, interestingly, when I said that on Yom Kippur, Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the second Luchos. Moshe Rabbeinu also asked on that day, Hodieni D'Rachecha. He asked Hashem, please show me your ways, which Chazal say mean, teach me the deepest secrets of your mysteries, i.e. tzaddik or ally, why bad things happen to good people. Now, I understand why Moshe Rabbeinu may want to know to reveal those secrets, but isn't he pushing it on the day that Hashem is forgiving Bnei Yisrael? Say, now, he's forgiving for the Chet Egel, forgiving for the... No, this day I want you to tell me... Because Moshe Rabbeinu understood, the day of forgiveness is a day of intimacy. If there's one day that Hashem may share his intimate secrets, this is the day. So Yom Kippur is an opportunity to regain an intimacy. That's why I said the Ne'ilah at the end of the Chag, that at the end of the Yom Tif, at the end of Yom Kippur, that is the intimacy. It's the Yichud. Hashem closes the door and cleaves everybody else out. That's what the Ne'ilah is. That's the intimacy that we hope to gain. And that intimacy automatically creates the forgiveness that we want. It creates the reconciliation that we want, and allows us to hopefully go further with the confidence. And yes, we will make mistakes, but if you understand, like those warriors, sin could be, you can use fear as a catalyst for growth, fear of sin. And we understand that we can embrace our sins in the sense that we can learn to grow from them, then that's what Yom Kippur is supposed to accomplish for us. And hopefully we get a little closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by the growth process, by the overcoming our sins, by acknowledging those sins, and recognize that it's a special gift of a special day. There was an article, and here there's an article written by an Irish woman years ago in Washington Post. I don't know how to track it down. She was Irish. She wrote an op-ed piece for Washington Post. She writes, "I wish the Irish had Yom Kippur." She said, "What an incredible day! What an incredible day! You take one day out, time out, nothing else is going on in your life, and you introspect about how to become a better person. What a gift!" She said. She marveled at the beauty of that day. And on Yom Kippur, we have to marvel at the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. This Yom Kippur is a tremendous gift that allows us to feel cleansed. It gives us a day to really reconciliate and say, I'm willing to bury the hatchet on almost everything, if not everything. So it's a marvelous day that we should appreciate very much. And appreciate that we have the opportunity to do great things as a people. And we can't run away from our mission. And on Yom Kippur, we're saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we want forgiveness. But not just because on a personal we want forgiveness. We want forgiveness because we want to be a part of your world. We want to be part of the Kiddush Hashem that we can create in this world. And Hashem will grant us life if we can create more Kiddush Hashem. We say in Tehillim, Yishlach Ezracha mikodesh, which literally means Hashem will send help from kodesh, from holiness. I saw a medrash sheikhata that says Yishlach Ezracha, Hashem will send you help mikodesh, from the kiddush Hashems that we make. If we make kiddush Hashems in the world, Hashem will help us. I'm going to end with just a story I just heard, hot off the press, new story, and it's not a fabulously fantastic, incredible story, and that's why it's such a beautiful story. Somebody we know quite well lost her husband very recently, less than half a year ago, and the wounds are still fresh. The husbands were very wonderful. She's wonderful. Her kids have to be real big baseball fans, huge baseball fans, Met fans actually. I know that because I taught some of the kids, and well, I guess they picked the wrong team, but Met fans, all right. Anyway, she took the kids to a game not too long ago, and her co-worker has a son who's 23 years old, who's studying to become a minister. So she went with her co-worker and a 23-year-old son to the game with her kids. Okay, and they're watching the game. And halfway through the game, she said, "Oh, by the way, we may have to leave in the middle of the game." So what do you mean? It's a great game. Why are you leaving? So, well, my children have to say Kaddish. He says, "You're going to leave in the middle of the game just to say Kaddish?" "Yeah, that's what we got to do. We got to do." They were like, "Wow." She said, "But no, first we're going to try to get a minion over here first." He says, "What minion?" So I explained, "You need 10 Jews." He says, "We didn't get 10 Jews. Where's the minion?" He says, "No, we'll ask them." "Who are you going to ask?" "I don't know. We'll see the Jews. We'll just ask them if they want to join a minion." "You're going to ask strangers to join a minion so you can say Kaddish?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "That can't happen." She said, "Of course. Just watch." And she went over to a couple of people. She let them look for him, tapped on his shoulder, whatever. She said, "Do you mind joining us for a minion? We need to say Kaddish." Within minutes, she had a minion. The next day, this coworker comes and said, "My son and I spent the whole night crying. We couldn't believe what we saw. What dedication, what beauty, what unity amongst the Jewish people, what priorities. We envy you." That's what we have. We have so much to offer the world. And that's what Hashem wants to do, to create Kiddush Hashem in the world. The greatest kapara for anything we do is create Kiddush Hashem, acting in a way that sanctifies Hashem's name. And the worst thing we do is probably Chil Hashem. So that's the one thing we want to really do true for, is anything that we may have misled people from seeing the beauty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we should really resolve this year to really increase Kiddush Hashem in the world. Yishlach Ezer Mikodesh. The Jewish people need help. We know that. We look at the world around us. We need help. Yishlach Ezer Mikodesh. Hashem's help will come from Kodesh, from the Kiddush Hashem that we make. Simple Kiddush Hashems that we sometimes maybe overlook and take for granted, but they make a tremendous impression on people. And that's what we want to do. We want the opportunity. We ask Hashem, give us life so we can continue to make those Kiddush Hashems. A good Kibben Shiar.